We're recording.
Whew.
All right. Do your thing. Intro us.
Okay.
Where are we?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Seed. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna light us an incense.
Okay.
Oh, no,
We
that's
have our pre-filming rituals that allow us to ground and land into the space at the same time as you, which is the intention of this video. Just a quick landing, a quick intro, and a quick understanding of our approach and why we're here.
and the sidebar, everybody. We recorded this yesterday, and it took us an hour, and we realized we needed to.
We're
Re-
redoing this. We're redoing this because we felt like we could do better. We felt like we could do shorter, that you deserved better. So this is take two. I am Danielle Jocelyn O2. Pronouns are she, her. And I am one half of New Room. As you can see, we've used, intentionally chosen actually, many different words to encapsulate who we are as individuals, as people showing up to this work, as people living in these bodies, in these times. The words that I have chosen to describe myself are first and foremost writer, which is a hard one for me to claim, but that I'm practicing to lean more into and really trust that my words have the capacity to carry folks into deeper into themselves.
they do.
Thank you. Thank you for making space for that for me. Critical optimist, this is an important one because it applies just as much to my personal life as it does to my approach to this work. I hold myself um, and others to high expectations. Um, I don't want to say I'm critical about myself, but I do nitpick in the same ways that I do nitpick and criticize the systems that we are living in and under, with a firm trust that I can and we can do better. I'm a facilitator, and I think if I were to redesign that or re-choose that word, I would say space holder. I
Hmm.
love holding space for you, for the people that we are in community with, for my family and my friends. It's my sweet spot. Um, I'm a dancer. That's also a hard one for me to claim, but Erin describes me later on as getting deep and getting down. I can get down, I can break it down. I'm a feminist. I'm an intersectional feminist. I believe in um, obviously equal rights for women and women identifying folks. That's one thing. But I also really firmly believe in leading from my feminine energy,
Hmm.
from showing up in spaces and patriarchal spaces under patriarchal systems with um, the energies and the approach that I feel are much more feminine in nature. I'm a bridge builder. I grew up in uh, a small Hasidic street, Jewish Hasidic street, and was very quickly aware of, not being different. I grew up in predominantly white spaces, and therefore quickly became a translator for my
Hmm.
family, a bridge builder, a narrator, a storyteller across differences. And I carry that role and that lens to this day with me, especially into the work that we create. I'm a mother to a beautiful, beautiful Black boy. For those who are also parents of Black children, you can understand the tension that comes with parenting a Black body and the fear, but also the beauty that I'm sure is held across all parents. But because of the systems we live under, I have a little bit of a pinch there for
Hmm.
raising a Black boy. existentialist, perpetual learner, and last and not least, I'm designing the future alongside
Yes.
Erin.
Alongside you and alongside everyone who's a part of this program and so
Mhm.
many other folks, Dani and I are both strong believers that our small intentional actions do design and shape the relationships that we're in, the communities that we're a part of and that we impact, the teams that we're a part of, the companies that we lead, and ultimately can shape and change the systems that impact our lives. So, yeah, that's part of what we're going to be talking about today. Thank you, Dani, for your intro. Also, what's happening back there? Is there construction
There
or
is construction. Can we
welcome to
pause or can we continue? Hold on.
pausing? We're pausing recording. Okay, we're back with less sound.
Let's
All right, so we're here to design the future, and we are here to plant intentional seeds, as we're also going to be talking about today. But first and foremost, our intro to ourselves. Why do we start with this? Because we really strongly believe that we need to engage on a personal level with the work that we're here to do. And so we want to create space, Dani and I, for all of the facets of who we are, but also all of the facets of who you are. And we're hoping, in starting with this intro to ourselves, that this is an invitation to you to start thinking about all of the different labels and words that maybe are imposed, but also ones that you want to claim and create space for through this program. And we want you to know that we honor you, we welcome all of you, and truly we celebrate the pieces that make you you. So I am an artist in so many different ways, with my hands, with art that I create, but also I think in the way that I view life and the way that I think about the music that I listen to and the food that I consume and the conversations that I have and so many other things. I really feel that we can turn our lives into our art form.
Mm.
I'm ever questioning, constantly wondering what comes next, always searching, but never lost. I'm a change advocate. I believe that we can and we must engage in the change that we want to see societally. And I think that we all have the capabilities and the potential to actually make meaningful change happen. I'm a big old hippie.
Big old hippie.
Big old hippie. I am a strong believer in love. I love, bell bottoms and protests.
Bright tops.
And, very emotional, which is something I couldn't claim for a long time, but, big sensitive heart, Pisces moon. I'm healing always. I am a big believer in therapy. I'm a big believer in humans and our ability to make this world a better place. And fundamentally, I believe that we are all good. Important one here, I'm a settler on Indigenous land. I grew up in two Indigenous communities up in the subarctic of Quebec, an Innu community and an Escapi community. And I, from a very early age, was very conscious of my whiteness, very conscious of the privilege that I had being invited into those communities. And my childhood just, as it does with all of us, just greatly shaped how I show up to this work, but also to my life. And like Dani, I felt that feeling of being an outsider, but it also shaped my reflections around belonging and community and connection, and also the notion of the power of an invitation, of inviting someone in. Seeking growth always. I am here to learn, and I'm designing the future as well with all of you. And a note on that piece about learning: we are here to learn. We are not here as the experts. We are ever evolving through this process with you, and are excited to be here.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as I mentioned earlier, today's video is really just a quick intro to get to know us a little bit, get familiar with our faces, with our voices, our sense of humor, our senses of humor. Do you say sense of humor or senses of humor? Is humor plural?
Do we have the same sense of humor or do we have senses? I think it's senses.
Senses of humor is understanding the approach and core values that shape the seed and why we name this a seed and how we think of this work as planting seeds. Looking at our learning objectives and what we'll be learning through the upcoming modules. Before we close, really acknowledging the land that we are on and moment of gratitude and recognition for that. And the last part that we want to and hope to remind you of as we close is really inviting the power of your imagination to this work. Really trusting that your creativity is just as needed and just as important as your criticism, as your open mindedness, as your thoughtfulness. Really lean into reimagining what we can create as a result of all of us going back and germinating the seeds in our lives and beyond.
I love that.
Thank you. So, how Erin and I got to this work actually shapes our theory of change. Her and I connected more deeper over the pandemic at a time where the world was up in flames and our social structures are being questioned, and it was post George Floyd, and there was a social reckoning happening, and we found ourselves really being able to hold space for these conversations, both in our networks and our communities, but also, and more importantly, for ourselves. And what we found was that it was our self work, as Erin mentioned earlier, our healing work, our therapy work, our trauma work, our play and creativity work that allowed us to move through such challenging times with as much um, groundedness and poise and compassion and grace.
Mm.
And we trust that that is a fundamental key to this work. Your capacity to really dig into yourself and acknowledge and observe the parts of you that make you who you are.
Yeah.
From doing so, you can then, and we have then been able to hold space for our communities to trickle that self compassion and self love and, um, you know, critical optimisms into the spaces that we live and operate in order to then drive the systemic change that we are all deeply craving and needing at this time. And so this theory, this cycle of it's not a cycle, it's a phase,
A
uh,
journey.
a journey. Love that. Thank you. This journey from self to community to systemic is one that will be taking you on, and one that the program has been designed to help you navigate this work. These are our values. I will take the first three and I will let Erin take the last three. Ideas, obviously, first and foremost. So, ideas is our acronym that we use as our holistic approach to EDI. We say inclusion, diversity, equity. The A we use interchangeably between access and anti racism. The S we use interchangeably with social justice and social impact. So, really fundamentally believing that the lens through which we observe ourselves and the world and the structures and the work that we do, that all of us do, needs to be approached through an ideas lens. Yeah, I'll put a pin in that. Awareness, this firm belief that the capacity to hold these conversations, first and foremost, stems from our awareness of self,
Mm,
from our ability to be humble enough and open enough and courageous enough to understand, again, what makes us who we are and what access we've been able to um, have as a result of who we are and what we do with that power, how we can use who we are to shape the world.
mm,
Collectivity, Erin mentioned earlier, is our firm belief of, or in rather, the collective impact of our individual actions. So if I do my part, if Erin does her part, if you do your part, if we all start with the self, the collective impact is inevitable. The systemic change is inevitable.
beautiful. So what about power? Power we're looking at through, I mean, this is a word we unpack constantly. We think about constantly about the power dynamics that are at play in relationship between Dani and I, in relationships societally. Within the context of our work, I think we're really imagining power through two lenses. The first one being the individual power, the inherent power that lies within individuals, and how we can intentionally use that power and be conscious of when that power is at play. On the other hand, we're looking at systems of power in which power is disproportionately provided to very specific individuals, and how we can begin thinking about power sharing and power redistribution in a way that is more equitable and more holistically impactful and positive. So we're thinking about how to shift from systems of power that are hierarchical and tyrannical and more dominant into power redistribution and power sharing. This leads us into two words that are connected to what we hope to be some of the impact of engaging in ideas and deepening our awareness and thinking about the collectivity and the collective we're connected to, and thinking about how we use our power. We're thinking about innovation. So what new ways can we put in place to actually begin to shift towards the changes that we want to see? An important note on innovation: some of the ideas that are going to come up are actually not new. We're not trying to engage in new, and more, and progress. We're trying through this work to think intentionally about how we can shift the structures that are currently at play that disproportionately give power to certain people and take from others, so that we can come back, return to a more, what's the word here? Communal, intentional, conscious.
Relational.
What's that?
Relational.
Relational way of being. And our final word, emergence. We really want to create space in our work, in our programs, to allow what wants to arise, to be born. The notion of emergence is the fact that new things are being born in the dark and then coming through to the light in the way that we see what happens with seeds, which is apropos considering the title of this program. We want to allow you, and we want to allow each of us individually to welcome what things are being born. And those can be new ideas, new perspectives, fresh lenses. They can be a new way of being. They can be a new way of looking at yourself or at other people. They can be new questions, new curiosities. And that's where this really begins to become a hopeful process, and one that's connected to the power of our imagination and the power of what happens when we plant seeds and give them the time and space to do what they do, which is grow. So those are our values, and these have shaped our program. They've shaped our approach. They shape the way we show up to today. Moving into what we're moving through in this program, I'm going to show you just my face for this one. We have 6 big seeds that we're planting throughout this program, which we're considering our learning objectives. you will see from video to video, from module to module, that we're planting mini seeds throughout the entire program. So there's lots of seeds that are going to be planted. But as a whole, what we're thinking about wanting to germinate here are these 6 pieces. First of all, we want to dive into an accessible introduction to ideas, concepts, theories, and frameworks. We want you to be able to understand what's at play when we're thinking about inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and social impact. We want to grow trust in your ability to engage in ideas, conversations more confidently. We want you to be able to understand the connection between the self, the community, and the systemic. We want you to be able to ask meaningful questions and to develop the vocabulary, the dialogue, the conceptual understanding, so that you can continue on this journey and deepen it from wherever it is that you are right now. We want to help you to better understand and plan for how your personal actions can contribute to community and systemic change. So Dani mentioned self, community to systemic. Not only do we want you to understand the thread there and how change happens, but we also want you to be able to plan for meaningful actions to get you to a place where from just engaging on a personal level to engaging on a community level to engaging on a systemic change level. Fourth, deepen your self-awareness while developing the ability to build relationships centered in care. This is about being in better relationship with yourself, being in right relationship with the folks that you impact and are in connection with. Fifth, connect with and find support from folks who are actively engaged in social change. We've designed the learning platforms for this program in a way that allows you and encourages you to connect with other folks that are learning about these concepts and engaging in these concepts. And we highly encourage you to dive into those facilitated conversations, to get to know the other people that are part of this program, to dive into the garden, which is the community space online where we hope you'll be involved in conversations, because this work can't be done in isolation and we want you to feel supported throughout. And then our final big learning objective and seed that we're planting here is growing the skills needed to lead inspired change in workplaces and beyond. This is big, big, big work that we're talking about here. And often it can feel daunting to think about how you're going to create process and strategy and structure in your organizations that reflects your intention to bring an ideas lens to your work. And we want to help you to grow the skills that are necessary to take meaningful steps along the way. So not just thinking about the long-term vision of years from now, what you hope will change, but really thinking about what skills do I need right now to shift the culture at work or the dynamic at work over the next month, for example. How can I start planting these seeds at work to engage other people in these conversations? Regardless of where you are on this journey from self to community to systemic change, we're here to facilitate and hold space for you. It's important for us to meet you where it is that you are, and to create space throughout this program for participants, regardless of where they are in their journey, to come together and meet in this place. And the way that we want to do this and the way that we try to do this is through a process that we call introsection. Introsection is a mind melt.
I'm so much better at saying it, by the way. I used to always mess it up.
Do you remember, though, the day that we first landed on it, how we were like, oh my God.
Yeah. We thought we were geniuses.
So introsection is a combination of 3 words: introduction, introspection, and intersection. Dani, do you want to speak to these 3?
Sure. So in order to make sure that we meet folks where they are, first and foremost, we want to make sure that we have an accessible lens and approach to this work through introductory concepts. So when we talk about accessibility, oftentimes we think about, okay, well, price point and who's in the room, but we don't often think about accessibility of information, of concepts. And so while we're not at a 101 level, we are probably maybe at a 102. And the ways in which we introduce concepts are then furthered by the second point, which is the introspection. So we have introspective prompts across the program to allow you to dig deeper within yourself. We are firm believers, again, that you only get from this work what you are willing to examine within yourself. And we encourage you to spend time with yourself, leaning into the questions that come up. And the last word is the intersection, acknowledging the intersection of the identities of the folks that not only we share space with, but we interact with that exist outside of the worlds perhaps that we see.
Mm.
Understanding that we are all coming in with different lived experiences and that um, wherever we are and however we find ourselves may affect our experience of oppression or experience of marginalization with these systems, within these systems.
Mm. Thank you. So wherever you are along your learning journey, we welcome you. And we're thinking a lot about these three pieces in the way that we design the questions that we bring up at the exercises, and the way that we share content in hopes that it meets you where you are.
Mm. So, in order to allow people to show up fully to this work, to show up vulnerably to this work, it is important for us that we all kick off this program and this experience by agreeing on certain behaviors and practices and protocols that we will hold not only ourselves but each other accountable to, and that we hope that you will hold us as facilitators as well accountable to. First and foremost, the Las Vegas rule. People will be sharing in ways that they perhaps haven't. They will be having realizations and, um, sharing stories that perhaps are new to themselves. And so we can't stress enough that what's shared in here stays in here. And we practice the um, sanctity that comes with the trust that's shared. Erin mentioned earlier that we do not see ourselves as experts in this field. Far from it. We are learners um, on this journey just as much as you. And in that sense, we recognize that everybody that we share space with, everybody that we interact with, that interacts with this program, also carries wisdom. So we welcome you to tap into your inner wisdom, to contribute that wisdom to the space, and to take up space and leadership in the program as well, wherever you feel is missing or needed. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. That one is pretty self-explanatory. Really, essentially practicing deep, deep listening for others and understanding that we are all coming in here with different experiences. And as a result of that, being able to move from a place of courage, grace, compassion that allows us all to make mistakes, that allows us all to witness mistakes. Creating safe spaces are important. Creating brave spaces in these times are of equal, if not more, importance. And in order for people to show up courageously, they need to be able to feel like they don't have to have it perfect. And so we encourage you to lean into those imperfections and to make space and grace for those who are showing up as well. Be the expert of your own experience. It can be so easy to take up the role of representative, especially if we're joining here with a team, especially if many people share our experience. However, we really want to practice and to encourage you to practice owning your experience, not detaching from it, really keeping it close to your heart, and then therefore inviting you to use I statements and let others speak for themselves. Next, if you're not wiggling and kind of squirming and feeling deeply, deeply uncomfortable or stretched at some point in this program, we always say that we're not doing our work right. Discomfort will show up in the body. It will inevitably manifest in some way, shape, or form. And we invite you to sit with that. We're going to talk a little bit later about the somatic prompts that we encourage you to move through, about the importance of feeling through the body. But we really invite you to just sit through the discomforts, breathe through the discomforts. If needed, disconnect and join back on later if you feel a little bit too heightened in your emotions. You have the right to change your mind if you enter this space with different perspectives, if you enter this space with knowledge or information that you did not have before. Please, please, please exit it with new ideas, with new relationships, with newfound hopes and dreams. Don't be attached to what you thought you knew coming into this. Hold space for radical honesty for yourselves and your own experience. Really own your experience. If you need to name something that hasn't been named, we welcome that as well. You can hold space for radical honesty in your groups, privately, at work, but we encourage, by all means, the truth to emerge. Lastly, it's not always this deep. It doesn't have to be deep all the time. Sometimes we can be silly. Sometimes we can be funny. I know that I will crack up a few jokes along the way, and Erin might as well. And you can see that we are also playful on this journey. So please, please, please feel free to laugh and share jokes and enjoy the humor that comes with being human and being in this body, these bodies. Thank you. So, which brings us to our first exercise in the workbook. Which of these agreements do you want to hold yourself accountable to throughout the program? It could be one, it could be many. I know that for me, the one I'm holding, and I think I like to remind myself of, is the second one. So recognizing that we all carry wisdom. What about you, Er?
Oh, they're all so important. Move from a place of courage, grace, and compassion that allows you to make and witness mistakes. I think that's sticking out for me right now, because I know our perfectionism can get in the way of some important learning opportunities. And I also know that no one expects us to show up perfect. They expect us to show up honest. So that really speaks to me as we're in the midst of recording these videos and thinking about how we want to create space for everyone.
Yeah, that's such a good one. And a good moment to remind folks that if ever they have feedback along the way, if ever they want to share something with us, if ever they feel like, we've caused harm, please, please, please call us in, email us, message us on the side, speak to your facilitators. We will be prompting you for feedback throughout, but we welcome any and all invitation to get better and be better ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. A note on this little exercise. So you may have already paused this video. When you see that I come up on the screen, that means that there's an exercise for you to work through in your workbook. We will do our best to say pause, but we encourage you to work through these workbook exercises as they come up in the video. It will help you to move through the program in a more seamless way.
Pause now. Pause right now.
Are you back?
I'm back.
Did you pause it? Did they pause it? Have you done your exercise? All right. So here we are in the middle of this this landing video, acknowledging the land that we're on. This land acknowledgement is coming up quite late for us. Typically, we want to do our land acknowledgement at the very beginning of any presentation we do, any workshop we do, any moment we have with clients or with people we're working with, because not only because it's absolutely necessary that we acknowledge the Indigenous peoples who are the guardians of the lands and waters that we have the privilege of having access to, but also because a land acknowledgement for us is about a lot more than just acknowledging where we are. It's about us taking a moment to pause and reflect on the decisions that we're making when we are engaging in conversations like these. We have the potential and duty to make decisions that do right by the people of this land, the Indigenous people of this land, but also by the land itself, and do right by the ecosystems that we impact. And so it's important for us to take a moment to reflect on who we are and what we are in relationship with. So on that note, Dani and I are in Montreal, Tjuktjaga, the traditional unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation. And we encourage you to take a moment to go to native-land.ca to see where you are and who the Indigenous people and the guardians of that land are, and to contemplate and to feel into the ecosystem that you are a part of.
A note on that, acknowledgements that we are aware again that, it's the least we can do, and in some instances feel a little bit futile, and a replacement of actually giving the land back to the Indigenous peoples. However, as Erin mentioned, it really is our way for us to intentionally build relationship with the land and really begin to think about what this land has given us and what we can give back to it. I know that for me, I am perpetually aware of the opportunities, of the education, of the communities, of the health systems, of the work that have allowed me to prosper on these lands and on the backs of Indigenous communities. So we invite you to take some moment here and exercise too, and think about what other things this land have given you and what you can practice giving back to it. This is one of many quotes from Adrienne Maree Brown that you will see throughout this program. Adrienne Maree is an author, a scholar, a researcher, a pioneer, a godmother.
We're obsessed with her.
What's that?
We're obsessed. We're obsessed.
We're obsessed. And she's greatly shaped our work, our approach to this work. I know that she has also been inspired by the Black feminists who have shaped this work as well. So in here she says, I think it is healing behavior to look at something so broken and see the possibility and wholeness in it. That applies to ourselves, that applies to our relationships with our kinfolk, and that applies to the systems that we live and operate under. Practicing seeing brokenness and the possibility of healing that.
Before we get onto this slide, I just want to point out, so I'm going to make this as big as possible so you can see it. In the bottom right corner where you see Adrienne Maree Brown's name from Emergent Strategy. This is a quote from her book, Emergent Strategy. So whenever you see that little flower in the bottom right, that means that, first of all, the quote or the concept is has been created by the person whose name is down in that right corner. But also, whenever you see the flower, that means that this is a resource that we've added to what we call the fertilizers. The fertilizers are an extensive list of our go-to books, podcasts, YouTube videos,
essays, Instagram posts, PDFs.
Yeah, inspo, and a way for you to deepen your engagement in the concepts that we're talking about. We have so much to cover throughout this program, which I'm going to be running us through in a moment. And we can only do so much while we're here on video. So we highly encourage you to go to the fertilizers, and especially for the concepts that like, ooh, tickle a little something, leave you feeling curious, inspire you for more, dig in. And maybe even let us know what fertilizers you would add to.
Not even maybe, even please.
Please
add your own fertilizers too. I think we're going to create. Are we sharing the doc? Are we?
The fertilizers? Yeah, the fertilizers will be shared. Yeah.
I mean, like, is it editable? How do we want to do this?
Let's figure this out after
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it
out. Okay, so to that note of what Dani was just saying from Adrienne Maree Brown about seeing something broken and seeing the possibility in it, we are going to be looking at a systemic view of our societies. And in some ways, we can see that as very broken. We're going to be talking about some pretty heavy systems that are at play throughout this program. We're going to be talking about patriarchy and capitalism and white supremacy. But we're also going to be talking about some of the systems that are counter to those, and some of the movements that are counter to those, and some of the exceptional voices and theories and concepts that can allow us to imagine new ways of being and doing, which is so inspiring and so full of hope. So full of hope. This really is a program about our hope and about the power of our imagination as individuals, but as a collective, because the systems that we live in were at one point imagined. So how can we imagine new ways? So we invite you, exercise 3 in your workbook, take a moment to imagine what could blossom from your participation in this program. Keeping in mind also, as you answer this question, that things will blossom for the self, for the community, and for the system. And things that can blossom for the self could be a small shift in your relationship with how you learn, or with how you care for your body, or how you listen, or a part of your identity that you honor. It could be something really subtle about the way that you show up to relationships, about the questions that you ask. We invite you for this exercise to let yourself go with it, and whatever comes up is valid. Just take a moment to sink into this. Okay. We hope you have paused and now we're back. All right. So throughout this program, you're going to be journeying with other folks who are invested in social change, folks who are either self-directed, self-funded, people who are socially conscious, who want to develop skills and knowledge in supporting them and engaging more meaningfully in social change. We have leaders from the nonprofit space who are actively day in, day out working in the community, and who are thinking maybe about how to create more process and operations around bringing an ideas lens to their work in the way that they engage their communities, for example. We also have some leaders from the corporate space who maybe are thinking about how to create more solid structure and intentionality in the way that they talk about EDI, DEI, JEDI.
DEIB ideas.
Maybe they're leading a committee or they have a mandate connected to it, and they want to do so in a way that's not just about checking the box of training, but they're thinking about, okay, so how can these concepts become a part of the way that we work, the way that we communicate? And our intention with keeping the learner profiles broad is so that when we are in conversation, when we're together in facilitated sessions, we can learn from one another. And this can become an environment where our different perspectives allow us to co-create and to dream in ways that are more holistically impactful. We're going to be moving through the following 5 modules. We have a lot to cover, from the self to the community to the systemic. Module 1 is called Cultures of Belonging, in which we're going to be talking about the work of Dr. John Powell on belonging, how we nurture belonging, and ultimately how belonging is what we're aiming for when we engage in ideas work, aiming for cultures of belonging. Then we're moving into a session that's really about the self, about us as individuals, and about how we engage in and perpetuate the systems that are play societally through our biases, through our access to privilege, through the way that we redistribute power, the way that we build communities and circles of trust. That's a big, big session, as I'm sure you can imagine. That transitions us into the conversation of understanding systems. We're going to be looking at the interlocking systems of dominance, as Bell Hooks calls them, patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy. We're going to be looking at them through an intersectional lens, understanding how they impact us even on a biological cellular level. And then we're going to be thinking about how we can begin dismantling these systems by looking at theories of change that are inspired by nature, and that allow us to see how these systems are not forever and new ones are emerging. That leads us into our 4th and 5th module. Our 4th and 5th module are really about how we move forward. Now that we know what we know where we're aiming, we understand our role, we understand the systems at play, how do we move forward? Module 4 is building communities of care. That's all about how we can show up to our communities with love, with vulnerability, with generosity, and nurture mutually beneficial relationships with the people around us. Not just mutually beneficial, but relationships that are aligned around common goals. And then module 5, moving forward with intention. This is about what are we doing next? Active steps now that we understand everything that we understand. Whew, a lot to get through, but very excited about this whole process.
In order to really, really lean into this experience, we encourage you to do 2 things. First and foremost, preparing your space and your mind. Where you learn is so important. Finding spaces and being in spaces that inspire you, that bring in sunlight, that aren't too dark, that aren't too stiff, where you can kind of maybe lean back and be supported. Have some water, some tea, some snacks. Listen to us in your ears if visual stimulation is too much. Really think about where and how you want to learn. And embrace or practice really learning in ways that you haven't necessarily before, which leads us into caring for your body and spirit. The body is a wonderful tool for learning. The body will reveal to you signs and emotions and signals about how it's learning and what it's learning. And so we've really, really incorporated throughout the program somatic pauses and somatic reflections, somatics being the practice of change moving through your body, the practice of pausing and listening to what your body is telling you at any given moment, at any given time. You mentioned earlier that discomfort would be a part of the progress and that that would show up. And oftentimes we feel that. We feel that activation and those triggers in our bodies um, viscerally, especially when we're learning about injustice, especially when we're learning about our own contribution to these systems. And you'll also be triggered in positive ways. You'll also have ticklings, like Erin mentioned earlier, things that feel particularly true, that resonate in your gut, that activate your sacral kind of root chakra and give you a tingling feeling in your root that make you hot and make you want to write and journal and go into ideation. Lean into it and allow your body to be a guide for how you want to show up in this work and how you want to learn.
We will have a somatics. We do have a somatics, a few somatic guidance tools in the fertilizers. One for helping you to deal with triggers and stress and moving that through the body. And yeah, we really encourage you when you feel those sensations to lean into them and to listen to them and to help that energy move through in the way that it's asking to move through.
And in that caring for your body and spirit, Audre Lorde reminds us that this is a self-preservation act and a system that is constantly trying to deplete us, systems that is constantly trying to divide us, that is constantly trying to gaslight us, to take from us. To care for yourself, particularly for folks from equity deserving groups, is an act of political warfare. To do this in community, to gather in community, to practice unlearning is in and of itself an act of resistance. So thank you for trusting us. Thank you for engaging in this work and for bringing yourself to this work, for committing to being the change you want to see in this world. We're very, very excited to journey with you.
What do we have coming up next? We have Module 1, Cultures of Belonging. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be digging into the work of Dr. John Powell, thinking about belonging as a practice. We're going to be thinking about our roles that we want to engage in towards collective liberation. We're going to be essentially laying the foundation off of which we will build our second, third, fourth, and fifth module. Can't wait to see you there. Enjoy the readings, enjoy the fertilizers.
Enjoy the garden. Oh, there you go.
Gather in the garden. Lean in and see what happens. See what happens if you lean in, especially in the garden, to meeting some of the folks who are on this journey with you. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We'll see you in Module 1.
See you in Module 1.